Welcome to Between the Sheets, the podcast where we're going to cover a variety of topics related to sexual health and wellness. I'm Dr. Stephanie Zwonitzer, your host. I'm a nurse practitioner and have been in practice since 2017. I have my Doctor of Nursing Practice degree, and I specialize in urology and sexual health. I am so excited to explore all of the various topics related to sexual health and wellness with you in a fun, spicy, educational, and non-judgmental manner. So come on, let's get between the sheets. Hey, welcome back to Between the Sheets. We're going to have a great episode for you today. I have Heloise Haupt on here. She is a self-love, pleasure, and intimacy coach. She is dedicated to helping women increase their confidence so that they can honor their deepest desires by creating a new relationship with themselves, one where they are a priority, where they can come first. No more faking or pretending or simply wishing it to be over. Yes. Welcome, Heloise.
Well, thank you so much for having me here. I'm so excited to dive into this topic with you today.
Yeah, me too. So, I think it's so interesting, our field that we're in and how, we've connected on social media and there's more and more people starting to have these conversations, which is fantastic. And on social media, of course, we're limited by what we can type and say and pictures and all of this. or we get put in Instagram and Facebook jail and all the things. So I love having you on here today to be able to kind of, bust through some barriers here, not worry about what is said and not said and all of those things, and just kind of have a candid conversation.
Absolutely. I'm looking so forward to this. I actually recently, last week, had a whole bunch of posts that I had to remove off Instagram because they were going against community guidelines. So
Yep. And finding funny ways to spell things and hoping your message still gets across. And
absolutely.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. But then I see so many boobs and butts and everything else on my feed so I'm not sure why our educational posts get hit so much, but oh well.
Yeah. It fills me with rage because when I see how important this work is and speaking about these topics, I feel like more and more people want to educate themselves. They want to have answers. And where do they go for these answers? Many of us have no idea where to start looking. Mm-hmm. And it's something for many of us that we feel a lot of shame around. And that shame is going to persist if we can't get information about these topics easily. So,
yeah, absolutely. So, Heloise, how did you get into, the sex world and helping women have better sex lives?
Well, I never dreamed of becoming a coach. This was not something on the horizon where I was like, yay, I want to become a coach. I want to pick this really difficult thing to do. I want to speak about these really vulnerable things and share my story with the world. No. So I faked my orgasms for 15 years. And during that time, no one had ever told me that my pleasure mattered, that my pleasure was important, that it was something I should speak about. And I think this is something that so many women can relate to, right? No one really teaches us much about sex and intimacy. So we're kind of taught that if you love someone, it's just going to work out and it's just going to happen. And so I remember I was 16 years old at the time with my boyfriend, and we decided that we were going to have sex. And I felt absolutely nothing at the time. And I didn't know what else to do. So I faked it because I thought this is what I needed to do. I needed to have this big orgasm in order for him to feel loved, like he'd done the right job, like everything was okay. So I faked it. And that started a really, really long journey for me of faking my orgasms with every single partner I'd been with since that point in time. And then in 2018, I went through a really bad breakup. And it was the second time I was being told, it's not you, it's me. And it forced me to really take a really long, hard look at myself. And I started realizing that in all my relationships that I'd been in, I was to some degree a doormat. I was doing everything to be loved. I was showing up as the perfect girlfriend, the perfect partner. I would show up on Friday evenings with a car filled with groceries, and I would cook meals, and I would wear the sexy lingerie, and I would perform in the bedroom. And somehow here I was once again alone with this person deciding that I wasn't enough and they didn't want this relationship. And so I was like, well, if I've been doing everything to get the love I so badly crave and it's not working, something needs to change. And that's where I kind of started realizing no one really wants to be with a doormat, right? People want to be with someone that has an opinion, has thoughts on certain things, is interested in certain things, isn't, oh, I'll do whatever you want to do. I'm happy if you're right. And I was just deferring to whoever I was with in the relationship at the time. And so I started looking around. I did some interesting retreats and interesting things. I bought a jade egg. I tried lots of different things. And eventually I signed up to work with Layla Martin, and I did her 650 plus hour coaching certification. So I did that in 2019 and 2020. And that changed my entire life because I did that to heal myself. I didn't want to become a coach. I need a 3-4 month deep dive into myself, figure myself out. Who am I? What do I like? What interests me? And the reality is, like, it's not that I couldn't orgasm. I could always orgasm on my own. So orgasming my own was never a problem. It was orgasming with a partner, with someone else. And it was only when I did that course afterwards, I started speaking to people and opening up and sharing my story with other women, that they all said to me, oh no, they're struggling with this as well, or this is something they also struggle with, or they've also been faking their orgasms. And so I thought I was like the only one, this like lone unicorn with this massive issue that I had to keep under wraps and secret. And then I realized actually so many women have this exact struggle, and I'm not alone. So there's absolutely nothing. I mean, I now know there was never anything wrong with me. I was just missing vital information and education around what it looked like to please me, what it looked like for me to enjoy pleasure in my body, how I could expand that pleasure in my body, what safety meant for me, things that none of us really speak about. And so it was after that that I decided, no, I actually want to make a career out of this, because I really feel this is something very close to my heart and incredibly important. And yeah, that's for me where the passion comes from, is I wish that there were more people like this when I was looking online, looking for answers, trying to find things, because at the time I struggled and there really wasn't much. And if I'd had more information more easily available to me, maybe I wouldn't have faked it for 15 years. Maybe I wouldn't have put up with so many bad relationships in the hope that someone would just like me. Maybe I would have, worked on my self-worth a little bit sooner. So that's my hope.
It's amazing how much self-worth and self-love affects every aspect of our lives. And until you find that, it's very difficult to allow yourself that pleasure and that getting love, the receiving love. You have to allow yourself to receive love. And if you're not feeling lovely, then you're not going to want to receive that love, And so I think it's something that I've had to learn too with different relationships I've been through. And one particular relationship where my partner was very emotionally dragging, and I was never pretty, and I needed to wear less makeup, or I needed to wear more makeup, or like nothing I did was, And so after you get out of that, the healing you need to do before you can even be ready for a partner is ginormous. And I think giving yourself that permission for pleasure and love, and that you are deserving, is so imperative.
Absolutely. I think for me, in my business, I really focus on these 3 pillars, and the 3 pillars is self-love, pleasure, and orgasm. Because what I've realized is if we're not focusing, so those are the 3 pillars of my Come First method. A woman comes to me very often. I've got clients coming to me, and the reason they're coming to me is because their sex lives, they have no sex lives left. Like they're not having sex, they're not being intimate anymore, they're avoiding it at all costs. And so that's creating a lot of friction in their relationships. And so they're coming to me because their relationship is hanging on by a thread, and they don't understand what's happening, and they really just want to be able to figure out how to do this thing to please and satisfy their husbands or their partners. And so when I start asking questions, then it becomes really, really evident that they're actually just not enjoying the sex they're experiencing. They've possibly never enjoyed sex. There's a lot of limiting beliefs there. And so on one hand, yes, you can provide a woman with tools and information, and that can shift something. But what I often realize, a bigger shift needs to first happen around the self-love piece. Because if you love yourself, you're going to prioritize yourself. If you love and accept your body, you're going to feel more comfortable in the bedroom, more comfortable to, wear sexy lingerie if that's your calling, or be naked, or have sex with the lights on. Whatever excites you, whatever you want to try out, right? But if you're judging your body, if you're feeling insecure in your body, you're going to be stuck in your head. You're going to be worried about how you're looking. You're going to go into performance mode, which is where we start faking it and pretending and thinking we're taking too long and there's something wrong with us, because we're not accepting of our unique experience in that moment. So I've realized that if I don't start out very often with the self-love piece of really going all the way back to basics and asking, what is your relationship to yourself? How do you feel about your body? How comfortable are you in your body? How do you feel about speaking up about your needs, setting boundaries, Having these kinds of conversations is really, really important. And I found that it's only when we really work on that self-love piece that then pleasure becomes available to us. Because very often we think of pleasure as something that's frivolous and unimportant, and we'll get to it, once we've completed our entire to-do list. But if that's the case, again, like, it's very hard to then prioritize your pleasure in the bedroom, because if you're not prioritizing it anywhere else, you're definitely not going to be, oh, it's time for us to, enjoy ourselves tonight. Or then you're doing it out of expectation for someone else and not for yourself. And there's, for me, so many different types of pleasure. It's not just sexual pleasure, but very often we need other types of pleasure in order to lean into the sexual pleasure that we desire with our partners. So we're like overstimulated, working very hard, focusing on doing everything in the house, being the perfect mom, being the perfect wife. And then somehow we expect ourselves to desire intimacy and want to be intimate with someone. And it just doesn't happen from that perspective. We have to really start focusing on ourselves to create that opening. So for me, like, self-love, I know sometimes it sounds cliche nowadays because everyone's like self-love, but self-love, self-acceptance, taking care of yourself is really the first piece of the puzzle, because when you do that, it then suddenly becomes a lot easier to prioritize your pleasure, to prioritize your needs, to prioritize what you like and want in the bedroom. And when that starts happening, well, then we can start focusing on the orgasm, the expansion of that orgasm, and what that looks like for you. And that creates a total shift, not only in how you experience yourself as a sexual being, but also your entire life.
Yeah, well, for sure, because it does go into every aspect. I mean, you're not going to learn to allow yourself to go ahead and have that favorite meal of yours and, go ahead and buy that new sweater because it feels so good on, if you're not also then going to transfer that into the bedroom. And I was thinking, what you were saying about like the comfort level of your body. When I got out of that relationship that I mentioned earlier, it took me a while to be okay with anyone seeing my body or having sex with the lights on or whatever, because I was so I was so insecure at that moment. And the more self-love that I did, shoot, I'll have sex with the lights on. I will dance around naked. Like, I love myself and my body. And if you're sleeping with me, you are fine with it too, because otherwise you wouldn't be sleeping with me. So, I mean, it's like, I have been able to let all of that go. And it's been so freeing for me and has allowed me to experience pleasure on different levels, which is fantastic and lovely. So I do encourage that self-love piece so much, because it's not only sexual, like we've said, it's every aspect of your life. But once you start to get that, then you can allow the pleasure into your life, and you can allow all these good things in every aspect of your life.
Absolutely, 100%. Like, that for me is it. That's the work, right?
Yeah.
For whatever reason, I always like to think about it. I use the example of a little baby. When you see babies and they're like touching their bodies and they're looking at you, and maybe you're changing their nappy, like, there's no shame, there's no disgust around their body. They're not feeling self-conscious. You're changing their nappy, you're like, they're giggling and they're happy. They're genuinely content with themselves. So much around what we've learned around our bodies, what it means to be sexual, comes with a lot of shame and guilt of needing to perform, needing to be a certain way, needing to look a certain way, it needing to be for someone else. And so for me, it's really shifting that and trying to get back to that innocence, I want to say, of, sex is something really natural. It's something, for me, I like to think of the definition as sex is two adults playing, right? Two adults playing together, having fun. How do you want to play tonight? What do you want to try out? What feels fun to you? What feels exciting? And I feel when we come at sex from that perspective, so much becomes possible. Whereas, when we're approaching our sexuality from this very narrow mind of, okay, well, my definition of sex is penis in vagina penetration, and that's the main act, and it has to result in an orgasm. If I don't orgasm within 10 minutes, well, it means there's something wrong with me. We're putting ourselves under so much pressure, and we're missing out on all the possibilities that are out there for us, and what we might enjoy, what we might like, and what we might enjoy and like might be very different to someone else. So I think really taking the time to figure that out is so important.
It is, and that it's an ongoing thing, because what you might like in your 20s when you're single and no kids is different than when you're having young kids at home, is different than when you're empty nesting and all these things, when my kids are grown teenagers now, like older teenagers, and when they were younger, you didn't have to worry about what was that squeak in mom's room. Like, they didn't put things together. But like I have, teenagers, they know why the bed is making those noises and whatever. And so you have to be more careful about certain things like that you didn't have to when they were younger. But then you also have the freedom to, explore more. And I think, just knowing that your likes and dislikes are going to change over your life, and that I love that you said playtime, because it should be so much fun. And if you look at it that way, then of course you're going to adapt and play differently throughout your life.
Absolutely. I mean, some of us, we like to play on the same things our whole lives. That's cool, right? There's nothing wrong with that. But for some of us, we sometimes like painting for a little bit, and then we'll go to drawing, and then we'll try something else. And so when we give ourselves that permission slip, it really is an opening. And what I see so much is that I think we've really approached our sex lives from this very narrow place, where when it should look like something. And, when I think about it, it makes so much sense when we see what's portrayed in all the rom-coms, on movies, on social media. We really see a very narrow version of what it means to be a sexual being. Very, very narrow. It's mostly spontaneous desire, when I think 85% of women have responsive desire. So now we're seeing one type of desire portrayed as the norm, which everyone seems to have. And then we ask ourselves, what's wrong with us when we don't fit into that narrative?
Right.
And so for me, the biggest permission slip we can give ourselves is to really be open with what we enjoy and are curious about. Not trying to shame ourselves, not trying to judge ourselves, but come into our sexuality with this curiosity of, okay, well, if I'm finding that interesting, or I keep on fantasizing about that, what if that means something? What can I play in that space? Can I speak to my partner about this, as opposed to making it wrong? As opposed to feeling shame around this thing because, I'm not performing in the way that I should be performing, or I'm not enjoying the thing that I should be enjoying. And I think when we start doing that, there's an expansion in terms of what's possible for us. And that's amazing.
Absolutely. So, we've talked a little bit here about like what it is on the personal level, but there's a big deal with faking it in the relational level as well. There's a level of trust. There's a level of intimacy that you can't achieve if you're not being honest with your partner about things. So talk to me about that. How do you handle that with your clients?
So, I mean, I can share from my personal experience is at the time when I decided I was going to do this work, I was in a beautiful relationship with a wonderful man, and I broke up with him because I thought, I'm going to go do this work. I'm going to fix myself. And then, if he's still around afterwards, I could get back together with him and he would never need to know. The fear of me having to own up about the fact that I had been faking my orgasms felt impossible at the time. It felt like something I could never even share or voice or speak up about, because I felt like he would never forgive me. I'd done this unforgivable thing, this horrible thing that made me so unlovable. And I remember reading a passage. It was from Emily Nagoski's book, Come As You Are. And in it, she described, there was a scene where she was basically like, you're this perfectly packaged, processed piece of meat ready for the enjoyment of everyone else. And that's exactly how I felt. It was perfectly packaged for everyone else's enjoyment except for my own enjoyment. And that really got me to a point where I decided, if I'm ever going to try anything with this person again, they have to know. And this was right at the beginning of my coaching certification. And I ended up being extremely vulnerable, writing a 14 or 15-page letter and sitting down and sharing this with him. And I remember being in tears as I was reading this letter because I was so afraid he was going to leave me. And I told him if he didn't want to be with me or see me ever again, he could. And the amazing thing when I shared all of this is he turned around and he was like, no, he's going to help me. We're going to work through this. And from that day on to this moment today, we are still together and we have worked on this. And so for me, I am living proof that you can do that work. It is possible. You can change everything. And that's the invitation I have with my clients. So I've worked with many women now that had been in the same situation. They've been faking their orgasms. They've never told their partner. And the reality is, when you're faking your orgasms, you are teaching or training your partner to do exactly what does not work for you in the bedroom. So for me, it was like, cool, after 5 minutes, I'm like, in and on, it's feeling great. And I could orgasm really quickly when I was faking it, right?
Yep.
But that's not true for me in real life. I need a very different kind of stimulation. And so my partner was never going to be able to support me in that if I didn't share that with them. Right. And so true amazing sexual experiences require a certain degree of vulnerability. They require us to be vulnerable and share what's actually going on for us. And if we don't feel safe to do so, then we should probably not be having sex with this person.
I think that's a great tip of advice. Yeah. I mean, I think you're spot on because, at the base of a healthy sexual relationship is honesty and trust. And if you're not being honest about what is making you feel good, then why are you with that person? It was one thing that I learned a long time ago as well, is to not fake it because of that reinforcement factor. Why do I want you to do the same thing next time that you did this time if I'm not liking it?
And it
I
didn't
don't
work.
want it.
And you have no idea, right? You're clueless about
Right,
it because I've given the performance of a lifetime, Oscar-worthy performance here, that this
right.
was amazing. So you
Yeah.
actually have no clue. And I'm guaranteed to be in the same situation 5, 10, 15 years from now if I continue doing this. And that was my case. I
Right.
mean, I faked it for 15 years. In those 15 years, I never got closer to experiencing orgasm with a partner. And there was a reason for that, is I just did what worked. I put on my performance, they seemed happy, and I moved on afterwards. And initially I thought, oh, well, maybe the perfect man, maybe they're going to have some different technique. Maybe they're going to uncover something about my body that I don't know, and that's going to miraculously make me orgasm. But the
Hmm.
reality is we need to get to know our bodies first. And so what I also find a piece that's really missing in a lot of our education is we tend to only start exploring sex with someone else, and we're not really given the freedom to explore our bodies on our own. So for many of us, we don't know what turns us on. We don't know what excites us. Or maybe we discovered masturbation early on, or how our bodies like to orgasm in a specific way. But because we were never given the freedom of time to just explore this thing and privacy, we tend
Hmm.
to rush to the finish line, chasing this orgasm when we're touching our bodies and masturbating alone. So what ends up happening is we develop this one tried and tested technique that works for
Hmm.
us. And now when we get into a relationship with someone else, we've got one technique that works. And now in my case, it was I needed my legs outstretched in front of me. I couldn't bend my knees, a lot of tension in my body. And now
Yeah.
when I'm having sex with a partner, my legs are bent. I just could not, my body was not used to orgasm in that way.
Yeah.
And so I ended up thinking it because I thought, oh, well, I should be able to bend like a pretzel and orgasm. But
Right.
I'd trained my body over a period of many years to orgasm in a very specific way. And I had done nothing to train my body to orgasm in a different way.
Yeah.
And then I was thinking there's something wrong with me. And there was nothing wrong with me. I just needed to practice, explore different things that felt good to me, create those different neural pathways in my brain.
Yeah. And I love that you say, give yourself the space and time to do this, because it is about exploring. You don't know what you like or dislike if you haven't tried it. So you might like more firm touch or more soft touch. You might like a certain rhythm over a different rhythm, or a circular motion versus a back and forth motion, or maybe you need your nipple squeezed while you're having your clitoris played with, or whatever. And those are all good things, but you don't know them if you don't take the time. And so I'm very big on self-pleasure time as well, because I think it is so imperative to learn what works for you. But like you said, don't get into that one rut of, okay, well, I didn't get off during sex, so I'm just going to go quick, do this, masturbation technique that I know is going to work. Like, allow yourself that time and exploration, and then do that with your partner too. I mean, how fun could that be? Like, I want to try getting off in a way I've never gotten off before. Ready, go. Like, okay.
Absolutely. I mean, something so simple that I can share. So I think it was 2 or 3 years ago, I was bitten by my parents' dog. And I mean, I generally touch myself with my right hand. I'm right-handed, and whoa, couldn't do it with my right hand anymore. So I had to
Yeah.
explore doing it with my left hand. Felt completely different to me, right?
Yeah.
And, there was kind of life happening that I had to explore something else. But that's the story for most of us, right? We're used to touching and exploring our bodies in a very specific way. And a lot of that comes to, the shame that we grew up with around touching ourselves, touching our bodies, exploring our bodies, right? And so we're generally only doing it because we want to achieve orgasm. So again, we're taking from our bodies because we're chasing, pushing, forcing out this orgasm, and then we're done. And so
Yeah.
that for me is where I kind of feel self-pleasure practice is completely different, because in a self-pleasure practice, I look at it as, what does my body desire right now? What does my body feel like? And how can I give that to my body? Sometimes it's an orgasm, sometimes it's not. Sometimes it's just pleasure, exploring pleasure in different ways. So I'm allowing my body to feel nurtured and cared for when I
Mhm.
am doing that. And that for me is something really, really special.
Yeah. Well, and I think that goes to, I mean, we have sex in different ways at different moments because of what we need. One night you might just need fast and furious because that's where your horniness level is at. And one night you might need more snuggling and coddling and lovemaking because you were lacking that physical touch that day or whatever. And so I think it makes so much sense to allow yourself space in self-pleasure to not have the orgasm as the end all be all, but just allow yourself to enjoy any type of pleasure that you receive during that self-care time.
Completely. Yeah. And I think also, if I look for myself, going from faking it to not faking it for a long
Mm-hmm.
period of time, I just needed the permission slip of feeling pleasure was enough. Because I faked it because I had all this pressure of needing to orgasm. And so I needed to take that pressure off entirely in order to be able to explore what actually felt good to me, what actually felt good to me in my body. I needed to resensitize my body in many ways. Always think we register trauma in different ways in our body. And when it comes to sex, one thing that I don't think is really spoken about a lot is the micro trauma of repeatedly having sex when you don't feel like it. And that's what I done to my body. So every time I was faking it, every time I was having sex and I didn't really feel like having sex in those moments. And so my body was a no, and my mind was, oh, well, we're doing this. It's a yes there, he's got an erection. I need to do this. Like, I'm just going to go perform. 5-10 minutes later, I'm done, and that's cool. But my body was registering that as a trauma. So my body went into complete numbness around that.
Okay.
And that was a big part of why I couldn't feel anything during penetrative sex is my entire vaginal canal was completely numb. So I needed to take time and space to create safety for myself to, verbally use my no, I don't feel like this. I'm not interested in this tonight. Or, maybe I could get turned on. Let's explore what a maybe looks like for me in my body, knowing that at any point in time I could say no. And that took me a period of many months. It wasn't like it was 1 month and I was done. I needed to really play in the space and give myself permission and make my pleasure enough and okay. So whatever little pleasure I was feeling, can I just follow that pleasure? Can I build on that pleasure without it having to mean anything?
Yeah. So how do you coach your ladies who have been faking it for that initial conversation with their partner? Because that's got to be really delicate to say, hey, I mean, we've been together for 3 years and just so you know, the only time I've orgasmed is when I masturbate. Like, how do you start that conversation?
So for me, generally, I suggest that we first do some work on themselves. So again, coming back to that self-love piece, feeling confident in themselves and understanding that what they were doing was a self-preservation. It was trying to take care of themselves, right? They were not doing this to be mean to them. And it's actually got very little to do with your partner when you think about it. So a lot of the time we put it on them, oh, they're going to feel so bad. They're going to not understand. They're going to be upset. But the reality is, for most of us, if we're in a loving, caring relationship, our partners want the best for us. They want us to be happy. They want us to feel pleasure. We really need to understand that. So for many of us, we're like, oh no, they don't care about our pleasure. They're not interested in that. I'm taking too long. But they genuinely want us to feel good. And so if that's the case, can we trust that they would want to support us around this, that they wouldn't want us lying to them and faking around this? And so if we can trust that, it makes having that conversation a little bit easier. And then it's going in really gently. It's not blaming. It's not saying I fake my orgasms because, you've never measured me in the right way or you've always rushed me. It's take ownership of your role in the situation, right? Like they will believe what you've led them to believe. Sometimes, yes, questions could have been asked. How could you have orgasmed in 2 minutes flat from such a little bit of stimulation, right? Sometimes questions could have been asked. I get it.
Yeah.
But generally speaking, they're going to believe what you tell them. And so really go in being vulnerable and sharing your side of the story. What made you so afraid to share this with them? Why have you not shared this with them? How long has this been going on for? What were you trying to achieve by faking your orgasms? When we really ask ourselves those questions, we can be really vulnerable in sharing what's going on for us. And when we share from that really vulnerable place of truth within us, most of the time, our partners are willing to support us through that.
Yeah.
Because they can then see it's actually got very little to do with them. And it's got a lot to do with ourselves, how we're feeling, what's going on for us, our self-worth, our belief in ourselves.
Yeah. And I think bringing them in, even though it's been longer than it should have been, you're owning up to that now. You're saying, look, I want to take our relationship to this more intimate level, not only in honesty, but also in pleasure. And I'm inviting you along for us to figure out what that means. And that's kind of fun.
Exactly. Because ultimately, everyone benefits in that situation. Because when you're faking it, you're not necessarily enjoying your experiences, or you're at least not reaching peak pleasure during your experiences. So by having this conversation, there's the hope that that's going to change, that you'll be, however long it's going to take you, able to figure out what you need in order to enjoy peak pleasure together. So you're going to start enjoying your sexual experiences a lot more, which means you're going to want them more and desire them more. And so suddenly you don't have a problem with your libido and your desire because, suddenly sex starts feeling good to you and you actually want.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think the shame piece is huge, like you said. So, there's shame around masturbation for a lot of people because you were taught that you don't do that to yourself, be it religious reasons, whatever. Or just that it was, don't touch yourself. Don't do, like when little kids are doing things and they're taught shame immediately. And that's not necessary. And then, I think once you bring that into your relationship as well, then you get that even more so.
Absolutely. It's one of the things I really feel is so important is to shame lives in the shadows for me. So the minute I'm feeling shame around something, I know I need to speak about it. I need to talk to my friends about it. I need to talk to my partner about it. I need to bring it into the light, because the minute I share what I'm feeling so much shame around, I no longer feel so shameful around that thing anymore.
Right.
So it's the wildest thing. It's the minute I speak to someone about it or share it with someone, suddenly it's not this like big black hole that's like eating me up because there's something wrong with me. I realize, either someone else will be, oh no, I experienced the same thing, or oh no, I know someone else who's experienced that, or you're not alone. And somehow it takes that charge off the shame. But for many of us, we feel so much shame around our sexuality, we can't speak to anyone about it, not even our husbands or our partners. We feel so much shame around our bodies that we can't speak to anyone about it. So we're carrying all the shame, and that shame is really weighing us down, because it means who we are, what we're doing is not okay, and it's not right.
Yeah, I think that's such a huge piece of it. If you're shame around figuring out what brings you pleasure on your own, then there's shame because you've been faking it. Then there's shame because of XYZ. I mean, it compounds itself. And then there's a level of, you don't want to own up, even with your girlfriends. You guys have been faking it. I don't know what to do. Da, 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 da. There's just, unfortunately, so much shame around sexuality in its entirety. And then you add these other layers of pleasure and faking it and things like that. And it's an onion. You have to take your time, and you have to pull back all these layers to get to the center and the pleasure that you really need and deserve.
Yeah. And I always say, you don't have to go online like I have. You do not have to preach to the world you faked your orgasms for so many years. For me, that was really, really healing, because it took me so much courage to decide initially, I'm going to share my story with everyone. It took me courage to tell my first girlfriend that actually I had never had an orgasm with a man because I'd been faking it. And the more I did that, the more I realized actually I had nothing to feel shame about. Absolutely nothing. There was nothing wrong with me. But it took me being vulnerable, and I had to be courageous in that moment to test with one person and see what that would be like, if that would be okay, how they would receive me. And the more I've done that over time, I've realized actually there is no greater gift than being able to be vulnerable with other people.
Yeah, I agree. The times that I have taken that chance to be vulnerable with people has, I would say 9.5, if not more times out of 10, has been really good. And I think the times that it hasn't been has more because the person I was trying to be honest with and vulnerable with wasn't at a place where they could get to that level as well. And so it wasn't even anyone's fault. It was just on their own journey. They weren't at that level yet. But other than that, as long as you are in a, mutually respectful relationship, I think anybody wants to take it to that next level and to get deeper. It's our nature to be together and to desire that closeness.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that's the only thing that's going to get you there. I really feel, I look at all the relationships I had prior to this one. I was doing so much trying to be loved, so much. And everything I was doing was trying to be someone else, someone who I was not. And it was really only when I let go of that guard, when I put everything down and I was like, fuck it. I'm going to show the world who I am, and that's going to be enough, and we're going to see what happens. It was only then that I could allow people in to love me for who I really am. Yeah. And that's something that you can build on. That's something that can last. And that's something that also doesn't feel exhausting and tiring. Because it's exhausting and tiring having to put up a front every time.
It is. It is. Absolutely. I mean, we do it at work when we don't feel like being at work and whatever, but you don't want to do it at home and in your bedroom when you're supposed to be able to be at your best and fulfillment and enjoyment and all of those things. We can fake it when we're at the office and we don't really like that person.
No. You don't really have much of a say there, but definitely when it comes to the close people that you surround yourself with, being able to be real and be yourself, I think is something incredibly important and empowering, because the more you feel loved for who you are, the easier it is for you to be yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So tell me a little bit, in case any of our listeners want to work with you or do, similar work with someone else, what can people expect when they come to work with you, and how do they get in touch with you? Talk to me about your program and stuff.
So I have a variety of different ways which people can work with me. So the main way that people can work with me is in my 1-to-1 6-month coaching program. So it's a 6-month journey. And the reason it's a 6-month journey is this work is deep. It takes women a long time to really process, shift, change limiting beliefs. That's for many of us, we've held our whole lives. So it's a beautiful 6-month journey where I will lovingly hold you every step of the way throughout that journey, taking you on I always say that my invitation to anyone wanting to do this work is an openness, right? It's not about having all the answers. I definitely don't have all the answers. I don't think anyone has the answers. But what I'm really good at is opening a box of possibilities for you. You do not need to like every single possibility in that box. But if you're willing to explore something else and try it out and see for yourself if you like this, if you don't like this, that's where you can kind of make progress and be open to something new. So my question is always, are you open to something new? Are you curious about something else? And if you are, then I think you would be a great candidate for coaching. So I've got my 6-month coaching program. Then I've got a beautiful 14-day challenge that you can take, which really is just little tidbits for you to figure out, what does pleasure feel like for you? What kind of touch do you like? How can you reconnect your pleasure, your erotic essence in a day-to-day basis, which is really great. Also got a beautiful program on libido, called Libido Lab. So there's a variety of different things depending where you're at and what support you need that I can help you with. Everything's on my website, so you can find me heloisehaupt.com. All my information's there. Alternatively, you can find me on Instagram as well.
Awesome. I appreciate that. And I appreciate you being on here today. It was such a great conversation about honesty and finding yourself, your self-pleasure, and being that next level of intimacy with your partner. I think it's just amazing. And you bring such a nice vibe and energy to it. So I appreciate that as well.
Oh, thank you so much, Stephanie. I've absolutely loved speaking to you today. I've really enjoyed our conversation. So thank you so much. And also want to just say, thank you for creating a platform and a space where we can have these kinds of conversations, because I think this is so, so important. At the root of it, if we were having more conversations like this, we would be normalizing more of our experiences and we wouldn't be feeling like there's something wrong with us when we're struggling.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Oh, yes. It's my pleasure. I love doing the podcast. It's a lot of fun for me. So, well, thank you so much again. We will put in the show notes links so that you guys can get in touch with Heloise and learn more from her and stop faking it. And we will see you next time on Between the Sheets. Have a great day.
Thank you for listening and spending time with me today. You can catch new episodes of Between the Sheets every Wednesday. Because what better way to add some spice to your life than to have a new podcast on Hump Day? We will continue to explore common, uncommon, and taboo topics related to sexual health and wellness. Please send any comments, questions, or stories to podcastbetweenthe.sheets@gmail.com. That's all one word, podcastbetweenthe.sheets@gmail.com. Have a great day. And remember how important it is to discuss these topics with your friends, your family, and of course your partners. In fact, you can follow, and share this podcast so they can see it too. See you next time for more sexual health topics Between the Sheets.